And I am excited today because I've been trying to get this guy on for a minute, and it's basically, in my opinion, Charles is like the expert when it comes to all things that are going to deal with the VA loan. And I would even say I thought I was pretty smart on it until we actually started hanging out. I was on his little TV show that he does as well, which you definitely, I'll have him tell you about it. And same thing. I'm just sitting there. I would say most real estate agents don't know what they're talking about when it comes to VA loan, and we should. For one. For two, people are always searching. They're searching. There are people out there, clients, buyers that want to use the VA loan. And I would even say people that own a home, right? That simple stuff. Did you know that every 6 months you can actually refi your house with the VA loan? So simple things like that. There's just not enough information out there. So I'm really hoping today we can get deep into that. So with that said, I'm excited. Thank you all so much. For those that are going to be watching live, awesome. Please leave a lot of comments because we're going to make sure we have plenty of time for comments and answering questions. For those of you that are listening to this on audio when it comes to a podcast or anywhere else where we're actually posted up, you can always hit back, leave comments on the podcast or YouTube, and we'll make sure we get those answered for you too. So with that said, without further ado, Charles, what's going on, man? I'm so glad you're on.
Things. Just going a mile a minute. Can't complain. Life is good. A lot of business to be had right now. So the whole team's just cranking.
That's right. You know, I keep telling everybody, I feel like I'm running to January right now. It's just not as slowing down. Everybody, usually in the winter, it's like, oh, it's going to slow down. We're running to January right now. So it's pretty awesome. So real quick, for those of you that don't know you and don't know what you do me a favor and go ahead and give them a quick rundown of who you are and what you do.
Real quick. Thank you. Yeah, my name's Charles Van Mediva. I've been in the business for about 20 years. I like to think of myself as a problem solver, an educator, and an advocate, Chris, that happens to be in the mortgage business, a loan officer. Not everyone that's a loan officer is a problem solver, an educator, and advocate. And that's what I believe I am. I've got a fantastic team of five, actually 6 of us now, right here in Southern California. We specialize in VA loans. We've helped a lot of military families move in and refinance. So we've got a good operation going here, and I love what I do, and I'm here to help.
Awesome. And I think you just said something that was very interesting to me. I know a lot of loan officers that do VA loans, but they don't know VA loans, and they're actually specializing that or advocates for it, or an educator, which is really what I think the VA loan space needs. Real quick, Frank, thanks so much, man. I appreciate it. So Frank, I don't know if you saw that. He says he bought his first home with a VA loan. So that's very, very cool. Thanks, man. I appreciate it. So what exactly is the VA loan?
In a nutshell, Chris, a VA loan is a loan that's funded by a private lender, just like a bank, a credit union, a mortgage company, mortgage broker, through a mortgage broker, that's guaranteed by the Department of VA. So the loan is not made by the VA, it's guaranteed by the Department of VA.
Guaranteed. Okay, so break that down, or I would say, unpack that a little bit for us, because I keep hearing the word it's guaranteed. And I think because we're so desensitized in our society, when you hear guaranteed, it's like, okay, so like I could just take it back to Walmart. Like, what does that mean?
Basically, what happens is when the lender makes that loan, they're cross-referencing with the Department of VA's guidelines. If that loan would ever go bad for whatever reason, there is a guarantee from the Department of Veterans Affairs to make the lender whole to a certain percentage of the loan amount. So that minimizes the risk from the lender's perspective, which is why we're able to get some, what you might consider marginal credit or marginal profile types of loans funded that wouldn't go through conventional, for example.
Interesting. Okay, so I definitely want to hit that up. It looks like Frank actually just dropped a quick question and says, what is the current limit in San Diego? And I know I wanted to ask you some of that, but definitely could hit that for him real quick.
Yeah, it just went up to 649,750. Now, that's not the loan limit. Keep that in mind. The VA does not actually have a loan limit. The VA does have a limit as to what they'll guarantee before there needs to be a cash down payment from the veteran.
Right. And, I was going to ask that question too, because I've heard like all sorts of different things. Oh, well, you could do it here and it's like $1 million plus and this and the other. And I think that's where people start getting really confused. So I actually have a question on that and we'll go deeper. So Frank, keep listening and we'll make sure we go ahead and talk a little bit deeper on that. And also looks like Tommy T's on here. Tommy Taylor says,
Tommy?
Thanks for your help on that VA deal the other day. So it looks like you helped him out on a VA deal.
So welcome.
Cool. So yeah, I definitely want to ask that question here in a little bit because I think it's important. I've heard all of these different variations when it comes to the VA loan and what the limit is and so you get this and then you got to put down payment here, and just like all sorts of wonky stuff. And it seems like nobody, you're the only guy I know, which is why I want to have you on that like in depth knows exactly what it is and what it means. And I know I come to you for education all the time on it. So we talked about what exactly the VA loan is. So how does somebody get a VA loan if they were looking to actually explore that? Like what's the process to get a loan that way?
It's a lot quicker, a lot smoother now, Chris, than what it used to be. I think the VA loan has had a bad connotation in times past. Folks would think it would take 30 days just to even get approved.
When I got mine, it did. And this was years ago. My first house I bought, it took me like 2 months when it was all said and done. Wow. So it's totally different now.
It's a lot more automated. We have a lot more power. The VA's delegated power to individual underwriters who can make that judgment call and sign off on the loan. So basically, a buyer that's looking to buy a home with a VA loan is going to make an application with a VA-approved lender. That application is about 4 or 5 pages. With that application, they're going to provide their income documents. If they're self-employed, they're going to provide tax returns. If they're a wage earner, they're going to provide W-2s and pay stubs. If they're on fixed income, they're going to provide copies of award letters and so forth. And then what the lender does, what we do, is we look at 2 things. We qualify that veteran, and we also make sure that veteran's eligible. Okay? Qualification is not the same as eligibility. To get a VA loan, you got to be eligible and you got to be qualified, and they're not the same thing.
So what's the difference between the two?
Eligibility has to do with your service, okay? Your service has to be of the right character. The character of service has to be honorable or medically discharged under certain circumstances. And then your length of service has to be acceptable. So you've got your eligibility based on your character of service and your length of service. You might meet all those criteria and then not qualify for a VA loan for a plethora of reasons. See?
Okay.
So as a lender, what we do when we get that application in, we're looking at 2 things. Is this veteran qualified? Okay. And is this veteran eligible?
Okay. Interesting. Okay. So it's really 2 different beasts when you look at it. Now, when you talk about the qualification, is it easier or harder? And it's funny because I already started going off script, but I'm kind of curious. Is it easier or harder when it comes to VA versus conventional? Because I know, and you and I have had this discussion. I think when I did your TV show, there's so many myths out there. You know what I mean? And I would even say I don't even know the answers to all of the myths yet, and I'm trying to learn as fast as I can. So, is it easier or harder when it comes to conventional loans?
Chris, I got to tell you, we do here in this office. We do conventional, we do FHA, we do VA, we do USDA, we do private money, we do construction, and my ears and I just perk up when I get a VA loan app because I know all hell's going to have to break loose for that deal not to close.
Oh, wow.
We get them close. There's something about the VA loan product. It is, in my opinion, easier to get done. There are challenges, just like any other loan, but you got to understand, it's a loan that's guaranteed by the federal government. See, so the lenders have less risk when they know that there's a guarantee involved. Fannie and Freddie loans, conventional, are not guaranteed. You see,
okay.
So there's more risk to lenders. In my opinion, the VA loan is easier to process through underwriting.
Now, if there's no risk to lenders, does that adjust the actual rate that the potential buyer is? Does that adjust at all?
No, keep in mind, I didn't say no risk. It's just minimal risk.
Right.
It's less risk because the lender says, hey, if they'll get it, the lender's going to do their due diligence just like they would with any other type of underwrite. But in the back of their mind, there is always this thought, hey, I'm going to maybe go a little bit further, maybe push the envelope a little bit further. To make this loan happen. The foreclosure rate on VA loans is the lowest of all types of loans.
Wow.
So again, lenders are aware of it.
What do you think that is?
I think it's, I think partly, and I don't want to make a big comparison here between a military person and a non-military person. In my opinion, when I deal with military buyers, they appear to have that much more of a respect for certain things. I might get myself in trouble here saying this. I think there's more of a sense of this is serious. This is a commitment I'm making. follow instruction. And then also the VA loan product really does take a good hard look at that person's qualification. We're looking at their debt to income ratio. We're looking at their income. It's not a walk in the park, you know.
Right.
But yeah, the VA loan product, the foreclosure rate is extremely low compared to even FHA or conventional.
Very cool. Wow. That, yeah, maybe it's a sense of responsibility. I know when I got my first house, I used the VA loan, and
Yeah,
it really was a sense of responsibility that, I earned this, and that's the way I viewed it. I don't know if that's the right way to view it, but that's how I viewed it.
sure.
I
Yeah,
earned this, and, if they're going to back me and guarantee and get me into my very first house, I want to make sure I'm responsible to that. So I'm not that guy.
yeah. I
That was
love
just my view.
that phrase. I tell you, I was trying to find the right words. I love that phrase. The sense of responsibility, I think, is very evident with veterans.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so that's how I felt when I got my first VA loan. Now, when you talk about benefits of different types of loans, and I don't know if this is pigeonholing but I'm
Uh,
asking questions. What's cool about this is when I get to do something like, these shows, I'm asking a lot of these questions out of ignorance almost because I personally want to learn. And I feel like if I can learn knowing that I'm a pretty smart guy,
sure.
then wow, there's got to be a lot of value to other people.
Right.
So is there a benefit between conventional FHA or VA? Like, is VA more beneficial than conventional in one way or another? I mean, I'm not because I don't know.
Absolutely. In my opinion, VA loans are superior to most other types of loans. The interest rates and the pricing. See, interest rate is not the same as pricing, right? Interest rate is the rate at which that veteran's going to pay the note back. Pricing involves, well, what comes with that interest rate? And what I mean is, can I get some credit from the lender to offset the third party closing costs that everybody is going to have, irrespective of whether you're a veteran, non veteran, if you're going FHA commercial? The amount of lender credit, Chris, that's available on a VA loan, i.e., the pricing, is superior to conventional.
So how does that
Uh-huh.
go on? I'm sorry. I'm just like I'm getting all worked up. This is cool. So keep going.
So as a result of that, most of our veterans, I'd say over 95% of our veterans, wind up just like the gentleman that made a note, $350 out of pocket, because there's so much lender credit available with the product. They don't have to dip into their pocket to come out of pocket to pay a bunch of closing costs, or put themselves in an inferior position by asking the seller for a bunch of help with closing costs, right?
Right.
So
And
in
that's
that
what I
sense,
was going to
it's a
ask.
superior product. Of course, it does not have a down payment by and large, unless you get to that certain loan limit, guarantee limit. In Riverside County, it's 453 and change. San Diego, it's 649 and change. Well, if you don't need a down payment, you're going to have a bigger pool of buyers that can move forward on that because they don't have to save 3.5% or 5% or 10% or what have you.
Right. And here, I'm going to ask Tommy has his question. Then I got like three I just lined up based
Sure.
off of what you just said, which was really
Uh-huh.
cool.
Yeah.
What's the cost difference to a seller on a VA offer versus a conventional offer?
That's a great question, Tommy. One of the biggest myths that we run across, and I'll get a call every week from a listing agent considering our VA buyer's offer. Well, what cost does my seller have to pay, right? And immediately the thought is, well, my seller, this is costing my seller more money
Right.
because we're coming. It couldn't be any. You couldn't be any further from the truth.
But
The
that's
fact
that's like
is,
a that's something that comes up in every, and I think you and I talked about
yeah,
that once before, and I wrote it down as a note too, Tommy. So thank you for bringing that up. I hear that well, I don't, and I'll walk in because I mostly focus on listings,
yeah,
and well, I don't want to work with a VA buyer because they're gonna, they
yeah,
offer 350, but they're gonna want five or $10,000 back. So I might as well just go with the conventional and actually get what I want.
yeah.
So that's not
Well,
true.
not true at all. The seller is not obligated to pay anything. I repeat, the seller doesn't have to. The key word is have to. The seller does not have to pay anything. Now, for two reasons. Number one, the lender can provide the veteran with credit or rebate, if you want to call it that, to offset and cover all of the closing costs, okay? Allowable versus non allowable. Secondly, a little known fact is if that veteran is not being charged the 1% origination fee, which, for example, we don't do it, we don't charge a 1% fee. If that veteran is not being charged a 1% fee, that veteran is allowed to pay what we all know as non allowables up to 1%.
Oh well.
So the seller doesn't have to do anything. And since we don't charge the 1%, if that veteran wanted to or needed to pay, then he or she can pay it, and the seller's off the hook.
Wow. Okay. So, it's kind of funny because I hear it often. I even was
Uh-huh.
talking to an agent the other day,
Yeah.
and I was on the phone with Kim, my wife, and she's like, well, I wrote it down. They're not allowed to pay. So they were
Hmm.
saying the VA, right? They said the VA buyer not allowed to pay, and the seller had to eat the cost. And this was from a different, of course, real estate agent, buyer's agent.
Sure.
And
Yeah.
I was kind of like, well, I don't know about that. So that's
Yeah.
really interesting. You said that. Now, can you break down a little more offset closing costs? So when you talk about the closing costs,
Mhm.
can frame that out as best as you can so we have a better, because like I said, what's cool about this one with you and I,
Mhm.
people that are going to listen to this aren't just going to be real estate agents. They're also going to be people that are potentially, because especially when we put it on YouTube, they're going to
Right.
be people that really want to learn about the VA process and what exactly it means.
Sure. Closing costs is a huge topic and a huge cause of some serious shock to buyers when they get in. Like, what do you mean? I need $8, $9, $10,000 to close? I didn't know that. So, closing costs can be broken into three different buckets. Okay, lender fees or lender broker fees or what have you, and then you've got prepaids, which is prepaid interest on the loan, and then you've got tax and insurance being collected by the lender. Okay, and set aside. We call that prepaids. And then the third bucket is escrow and title fees. Okay. So those are three different buckets. Now, I like to make a distinction when I talk to my VA buyers. I like to make a distinction between fees and costs. Okay. And I tell the veteran, look, a fee is something that you pay someone for their services. If I hire a plumber and they're going to come to my house, that plumber is going to charge me a fee for their services. Okay. So you
Right.
got fees and you got costs. Costs is things that you're going to incur as a result of home ownership, right? So taxes, the county taxes, it's a cost. Okay, insurance. So when we look at closing costs, we look at the three buckets. The veteran is allowed to pay any of those, if any and all of those, if that veteran is not being charged the 1% origination fee by the lender. And since we don't charge it, they can pay all of it.
Interesting. Okay. So the 1% origination fee, because it's come up 3 times and I didn't ask
Yeah.
for the people that do charge it, why are they, or why aren't you? I guess. Does that make
Um,
sense?
it does. It's just really a business decision that lenders make. It's a profitability decision. Myself and the funding that we provide, there's so much profit in the VA loan for lenders in the secondary market with Ginnie Mae and what have you, that we don't feel the need to have to charge the veteran a fee of any kind up front. Say,
Interesting. So I'm not calling out anybody else that might be watching this that's a lender, and I won't ask you to answer this, but
yeah.
if I were just listening, I would basically hear, Chris, I make a good amount of profit doing good work for good people, and I choose not to charge extra on top of already making a good living for a good day's work. And some
Okay.
people choose to. Is that maybe sort of
I
right?
think that's pretty much where it's at. Some lenders have massive overhead because of their nationwide presence, right? They've got to foot the bill for 30, 40, 60 branches or what have you.
Right, right, right.
Some don't, right? And so that has a lot that plays into it quite a bit. I'll be brief, but I had a situation just yesterday. I don't mind saying the listing agent's name. His name's James Shelby. You know him. He's a great
Love James
guy.
Shelby. Good guy.
James had me cross qualify a particular VA buyer. When I looked at the buyer's figures that had been given him by another well known nationwide lender, that lender was charging him $2,100 in some sort of fee, origination or something or other, and a higher interest rate. And when we compared figures, we were at a lower interest rate at a 195 cost to
Mm.
get that rate. Now go figure,
It's
right?
funny. I've actually had a few different lenders on, whether it was live radio, whether it was on YouTube, or even in my office. And like, I've, when I was younger, before I really got deeper into this business, I was, this big bank and that big bank. And I thought that was the only path because I was uneducated. And the deeper I get into this, the more I realize like finding a good quality lender. So for the real estate agents that are watching this,
Yeah.
finding a good quality lender will beat the crap out of almost any bank and also provide better service to your clients. You need to go out and find, and if you haven't, if you
Yeah.
don't know how, I have previous videos. I've interviewed other people. Watch them on YouTube. You need to go out and start interviewing multiple lenders and find a good quality lender that will take care of your clients. And it's not even like, even if you don't get the benefit of it, just know that you're doing good things in the world by helping people the right way, because the big banks don't care. It's a machine, which is fine, but there are local people that help the local economy, that are feeding their kids and working their tails off to take care of people that you could be introducing your clients to, as opposed to just sending them down the street to, Wells Fargo.
Well, one of the things I'd like to add to that, Chris, if I may, without throwing the big lenders or credit unions under the bus, is
I will. My show.
I often get the question. It happens every other conversation, that, especially with active duty service members. Well, why should I use you and not Navy Federal Credit Union or U.S.?
Because Navy Fed is awful. So since again, it's my show. In my opinion, every time I've had a Navy Fed buyer come through us purchasing a home or as a buyer, I can only think of one time we've actually closed. I think I did a whole episode just on this. It is so horrific. The experience is so awful. Every time you call, you're getting a completely different person in a completely different time zone that doesn't know anything about what's going on, and they don't care. And literally you're running all the way up until the day, like you're in 30, 45 days, like to the day of closing, trying to hoping that it's going to sort out. That's why, I have not once, and I do this a lot, not once had a good experience with Navy Fed. And this is what's messed up. I have Navy Fed as my retirement account, because I retired in the Marine Corps. That's my personal account. Yeah. They're great on some stuff, but when it comes to loans with that specifically, they're falling short, in my opinion. And then I met,
if I can add to that, when the service member asks me, well, why should I use you? One of the things I tell them about 3 or 4 different things, but one of the things I tell them is, hey, the credit union is going to do CDs, checking accounts, savings accounts, money market accounts, IRAs, 401ks, whatever they do, auto loans, and then, by the way, we do mortgages, right? Right. Mortgages is all we do. So we specialize in it. So the overhead that they carry and they have to pass on, we don't have that because we're not doing all those other things.
Right. I think Frank said it best. I don't know if you know Frank, but Frank is pretty amazing. I like watching a lot of his stuff. And he's basically a property inspector, and he's the businessman. He really puts out really good content too. So he says the employee at the big bank doesn't usually have the experience of the independent broker. And I agree. 100%. I mean, do you agree or disagree on that one?
I completely agree with that. I think that, we get down and dirty with the files. We solve problems. I feel like the big banks, the credit unions, really, no offense, are 800 number order takers. It's really all they are. And you may get lucky and wind up talking to an actual loan officer that knows something. For the most part, the process is being handled by an order taker. See? Right. And that's not going to help you.
No, not at all. So let's talk about dollar amount. Because I would even say to this day, I'm still confused on how all of that works. So people, and somebody already asked, what is the maximum dollar amount? But what exactly does that even mean? And so can you break that down for us?
Sure thing. Believe it or not, the VA does not impose a maximum loan amount. It's unbelievable. They don't impose a loan, but there is a limit to the liability they will take on. See? Interesting. Which then translates into what a lender is willing to lend. See, so I know I have someone here in my office that did a $1.5 million VA loan. That was me, but it wasn't me. So there's no max VA loan amount. There is a max guarantee involved, which then translates into it. So the way it works is, in every county, the VA has set a limit, and beyond that limit, right? For example, Riverside County is 453 and some change. Beyond that limit, the veteran's going to have to come in with 25% of the difference between that price and that guarantee limit. But the VA does not impose a max loan amount.
So is that still here? Just because it went back to our last one, I'm going to ask. Daniel popped up something real quick. I've closed multiple loans with Navy Federal Credit Union, but it has always been pins and needles for my clients. I've since moved on because I believe my clients deserve better. And, I agree with you, Daniel. Yeah. That's why I did the same thing, and I was a believer until I had to deal with them a lot. But what I was getting ready to go to was, okay, so I can do a loan using the VA loan to $1.5 million, but let's say it's in Riverside. The limit is $454,000 is what they're going to guarantee. For everything past that, which is roughly a $1 point and some change million. Now, do I have to get a down payment for that? Is it now considered part of a conventional? Like how does that sort out?
It's actually, it'll be 25% of the difference.
Okay, so 25% of the $1 million, that would be the down payment total, and then it would be treated. It's still be a VA loan, but it's sort of like dealing with a conventional loan after that point.
25%. No, not really. The VA guidelines still come into play.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So a lot of lenders will actually not go past a certain loan amount, even though these rules apply to any VA loan that you do.
Interesting,
so
because
will cap it.
I've actually heard, and I've talked to other lenders, which is why I think we now only deal with you when it comes to VA. They almost won't work with somebody unless it fits within those limits. You know what I mean? I've actually ran into that. It's like, oh, well, you know, you're trying to buy a $600,000 house. It's the VA loan. This is all it is. And I would even say, I hear agents say it all the time. Well, here's the max for the VA loan. So since you can't do that, why don't we look at a different loan?
Right.
So you're telling me that's like bunk.
That's absolutely not true. It's actually amazing. The DU, and I don't want to get too technical here, but DU findings, you know, DU, as you know, is an automated system thrown out by Fannie Mae. You can get a VA loan underwritten through that portal. And when you get DU findings, the verbiage on there can be misleading. It kind of makes you think that the loan limit is 424,100 or 453,100 in that county, and it's asking the underwriter to look further. But no, the VA does not impose a loan limit. They just have a certain point beyond which they're not willing to take on any more liability, which then translates into, hey, Mr. Mrs. Veteran, you got to come in with 25% of the difference.
Huh. Wow. Okay. Fantastic. That's very cool. So it sounds like, just because I always like being positive and negative, I think there's an importance to light and dark, right? So far, we've heard all the great things about the VA. In your opinion, what are some of the challenges with doing a VA loan?
My experience, two things. In fact, before I answer that, let me tell you some of the benefits, so it kind of set the landscape, okay?
Okay.
If that's okay, kind of come out.
Yeah, absolutely. Please do.
So, VA loans, by and large, the debt-to-income ratios that we see when we get our approvals are astronomically higher than you would with FHA or conventional. So that veteran's being given much more buying power than they would if they were getting an FHA loan. We see that all the time. We've seen debt-to-income ratios in the 60s and 70%. Got them approved and funded. VA buyers don't need the down payment, by and large. In this county, 453,100, no down payment. San Diego, 649 and change, no down payment. Wow. The underwriting is fairly flexible. They can get a VA loan just 2 years after a derogatory credit event, such as short sale, foreclosure, bankruptcy. That's the lowest seasoning period of any traditional loan out there. So there's all these benefits. The downside, in my experience, has been two things. Number one, I find that half the time I spend is spent on trying to level the playing field on behalf of that veteran buyer with, I hate to say it, misinformed or uneducated listing agents.
Truth.
And their sellers.
Truth.
And that can be exhausting. But we do it all the time. So one of my jobs that I've taken on as an advocate is to level the playing field for that veteran buyer so he or she does not get treated unfairly because of some myth that this person has. Secondly, I wish the VA would come down a little harder on their appraisers to get them to move quicker, move faster. What we tend to do on our VA transaction is not even wait for the buyer to pay. We're going to order that appraisal on day one or day two, because we know that appraiser could take, the full 10 days, right? Those are probably the two challenges I have that I've experienced with VA financing.
Interesting. So I the very first one that you brought up, I 100% agree. And I think you and I, we talked about this. And it's absolutely misinformed sellers, agents, people that are working with people, trying to sell a home, and also sellers, the myths that are out there when it comes to VA and what it means to have a person write an offer to purchase a home using the VA loan. And it's pretty disgusting. And, my opinion, and it's almost like it's not that I'm saying it's encouraged, but it's almost like, at the end of the day, somebody's trying to sell a home, and it seems like the agents, they're like, well, it's just going to be complicated. And, they're not going to come in. Some of the stuff that we've already bunked Like
right.
we're debunking it right now as
Sure.
we're talking.
Yeah.
And, so the question I would ask is, even for me, for what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to create content and information to educate real estate agents. So what can we be doing in the industry to actually educate sellers, agents, or even sellers? Like so you're out there doing it yourself, but what else could other people, people are going to watch this, what could they be doing to help in your cause?
I really think that the brokers of real estate companies, brokerages, franchises, whatever, really have the ultimate responsibility to train their agents. The listing agent has so much power to poop on that VA offer, right?
Right. Right.
And send that veteran, well qualified, well meaning VA buyer, to the back of the line because they're uninformed or misinformed or carry some myths. So I think the ultimate responsibility is with brokers or real estate offices, franchises, what have you, to bring in good help, good resources to teach and train their agents. These agents they're not lenders, right? Realtors are not lenders. We can't assume that they know all this stuff. And there's so much misinformation on the internet that's probably a bad source. You need to have someone come in that's experienced. I actually am a member of Military Mortgage Boot Camp.
Here, hold on 1 second. Let me go ahead and
Military Mortgage Boot Camp, really cool organization, top loan officers nationwide. We offer classes, in-house classes for realtor offices, teaching on training, and the topic is presenting a VA offer sellers will accept. So to answer your question, I think that's where the ultimate responsibility is.
Awesome. So I took a note real quick. I'm going to bounce this off you.
Sure.
And if you're willing to do it, I'll do it with you. So I took a note. It says, get with Charles and let's sit down and create some ebooks for the Real Estate Blitz that we could send nationwide, and even a video series if you're available. I'll get my videographer over there and we'll create a video series just to break down everything on the VA. We'll put it on YouTube. We'll put it out online, podcasts. We'll blast it everywhere. And I'll put it up on the website because, a lot of agents are looking for information like this, and we can create, with minor adjustments, we can create a blog series as well. And we'll start creating this for potential clients so they can educate themselves. So if you're willing, I'll start framing it out and send it to you.
More than happy to. Any avenue, Chris, where we can help ultimately serve that veteran, keep that veteran from being treated unfairly when they make an offer. I'm game for that.
And I think that's really what it is. You hit it right on the head, being treated unfairly. Right. I know even when I submitted, because I've used the VA loan 3 times now. And the first 2 times when I submitted, it was like pulling teeth and having a fight, and ended up having to overpay in order to get mine accepted.
Ish.
Yeah. And, but I didn't know at the time, but it is what it is. So cool. We'll definitely set something like that up. Now let's talk credit scores.
Yes.
Credit scores, because and not just credit scores, but you said something earlier that I thought was like interesting and also key. Credit scores, and then talking about debt to income. I know they're 2 different beasts, but I think they're 2 potentially major myths that are out there that I would like to talk about.
Yeah, absolutely. Believe it or not, Chris, the VA does not have a credit score requirement. They never have, and they never will. FICO scores only came out in the last 20 years. So VA does not have a score requirement. So it's up to that lender to make sure that they're comfortable with that buyer. We've seen VA loans to get done at 530 FICO. We've also seen VA loans get denied at 720 FICO. So it's not just about the score. There's other aspects. So the first thing we do, just in a nutshell, is we run the file. All lenders do this. We take that application in. We take that credit report. We pull it. We look at the whole shebang, income, assets, what have you. We run it through one of 2 automated portals. One's known as DU, one's known as LP. And we're hoping that we get an approval.
Right.
If we get an approval, we're done. We're going to move forward. If we don't get an approval, then what we do is we turn to a manual or an old school way of underwriting it. Now you've got a physical human being underwriter just making a judgment call, right, based on that buyer's profile, credit, income, assets, what have you. So credit scores, they have a big part to play, but they're not the be-all and end-all of it. We will do a VA loan, our bank, all the way down to 550. We have sources that'll go down to 530 or lower. So it's not about just the score.
Right. Okay. So real quick, and thank you, Stacy. I appreciate it. Just for, like I said, because there's probably people listening to this that aren't in the industry. So DU and LP, what exactly does that stand for if they're confused on that?
DU is desktop underwriter and LP is loan prospector. And they're very similar. They're automated engines that have built-in credit risk algorithms built in, and they're from two different agencies. Fannie Mae offers DU and Freddie Mac offers LP. VA loans can be underwritten by either of the two. As a matter of fact, Jacob Eagle, I don't know if you're watching, he's a Marine, former Marine down in San Diego. He referred me a client recently that we could not get a DU approval. We were trying everything we could. Ran it LP, boom, done. And we closed. So another thing is you want to make sure your lender's willing and able to run both automated systems in the event that one doesn't work out.
Right. Awesome. And actually, yeah, it looks like so Stacy, I don't know if you know Stacy. She's also a lender. She watches a ton of the Real Estate Blitz. Yeah, she's a wonderful lady. So very cool. Yeah, she actually hit me up. We had lunch one day. Really, really nice lady. So we talked about the credit portion, which I didn't know. So that's what's cool. I get to learn stuff. I had no freaking clue about that. That's mind-blowing to me. So let's talk about debt to income, because again, I think that's something that I didn't know. I've always been under the assumption that there was, you know, what is it, 45, 46%, and that's it. So how does that sort out?
Let me interject. Sorry, let me cut you off. An incredible thing about the VA product that makes it so much superior to other products is VA does not recognize a front-end debt-to-income ratio and a back-end debt-to-income. Front-end in FHA lingo or conventional lingo means your mortgage payment alone compared to your total income, right? That's your front end debt to income ratio. So if your mortgage payment is $1,000 a month and you make $3,000 a month, your front end is 33%. Your back end ratio is your mortgage payment plus all of your other debt, your consumer debt. So if your mortgage is $1,000 a month and your Sears credit card, Discover, and all that jazz is $1,000, so you've got $2,000 a month in debt and you're making $3,000 a month in income, then your back end is 66%. FHA underwrites that way, so does conventional, so does USDA. VA does not. VA recognizes one ratio. So we found, by and large, that a veteran of the same profile can get a higher amount approved, more buying power, because we're recognizing one ratio. It's an amazing thing.
Interesting. And then in the process, you know, like you said, it has the lowest foreclosure rate on top of it. And it's crazy because you would think, you know, and it's getting harder. So a lot of people, I've had people from Massachusetts. I mean, people all over the country that hit me up, call me on my cell phone because I put it out there on YouTube, and ask me about, you know, just real estate agent type stuff. And it's funny because when I talk about the San Diego market, which is where I started and I'm still in, but I'm now in the Riverside market as well. In San Diego, like, just to get into even a rental property, what always blows my mind is nobody cares about your debt to income when you're renting a property. So you're getting abused. People are getting abused in San Diego and all over the nation when you rent a property. If you bought a property, it's way cheaper, but then you say, well, I don't, you know, debt to income, I don't have it, so I can't get a loan. And I find that wrong. I think there's something wrong with that personally. But I mean, that's really interesting that there's one view. They have the responsibility. They want to live in a house as opposed to bleeding money in a rental, and that they get the opportunity to do it with the VA loan. I just think that's really, really cool.
Yeah, no, it's a great thing. And like I said, we've seen, you know, automated approvals up into the 70s on the debt to income ratio, which some might construe as, you know, reckless. I don't know. But apparently the VA doesn't have a problem with it because the VA will guarantee those loans.
You know, and again, if I were looking at it, if I wasn't looking at it from a if I was looking at it from a positive like stance, which is where I'm a pretty positive person, again, I would go right back to, I know how much people are getting abused with renting a property. So same situation. So in San Diego, you make $3,000 a month and you're spending $2,200 a month on rent. And then, you know, and I know people like this, they're renting a place for that much money because they got kids and they have to, and they're having to go to the food pantry when they could probably just move 15, 20 minutes a little bit north and actually get into a home that costs less than that. You know what I mean?
I just recently on Facebook was talking with a service member that got deployed to Okinawa, Japan. I did his VA loan in November of 2014, so 3 years now. And his condo in Imperial Beach that he bought has gone up 130 grand in 3 years. Right. So if he would, now he's going to keep it as a rental. He's moving out. He'd be probably back from Japan in 4 years or what have you. But, you know, what an amazing thing. You're buying a property, then you're getting PCS'd out of here or deployed, but you've picked up equity and you're going to continue to pick up equity. And you're not even living in it.
Right. Yeah. I talk a lot about that on the Blitz, whether it's buy and holds, investments in general. And yeah,
Yeah.
you're 100% right. I got a phone call this morning. Um, Listing appointment. They live in Florida. They just got stationed out there. Husband in the Navy. Been out there for 2 months, looking to sell their house in Murrieta. Reached out to me this morning, and they're like, "Yeah, we've been renting it for a while. They just went from a different duty station. They actually haven't been in the Murrieta home in a long time, and they're like." Yeah, we just we're ready. We're going to make enough money on it now, and we've already been living where we are with the VA loan where we are now. And I'm like, wow, man, that's the way to do it. Had a quick. It's funny because this just came up from Stacy, and it leads into the next question that I actually had. It says, "Hi, Charles. Looking for more knowledge on VA loans from your interviews. Lots of moving parts on them. So this is what I was going to ask you. You said something earlier, and I made a note of it.
Yeah.
You said there's a lot of bad information online about the VA loan. Process, VA loans in general. And here's the thing, I agree with you 100%. So if somebody, and it's not if, there are so many people out there, real estate agents and people that want to buy, they're looking for content information. They're looking for anybody that actually help them. And I know that there's a lot of bad information. Where should they be looking? What should they be reading or exploring to educate themselves on the VA loan?
That's a tough question, Chris. Because everyone's, with the way social media is now, anyone can put out any content, whether it's irreputable or not, if it's true or not. I'm part of Facebook groups of loan officers, and I see stuff on there all the time. I'm like, oh my God, that's not true, but it's all over the internet. The Department of VA has a website that has some good information, but really you've got to seek out someone in your community that is a specialist on VA. And that's not hard to find. You can Google them in any community and look at their reviews and look at what they're doing and maybe talk to some realtor partners and find someone that's an experienced specialist or expert in what they do. Personally, here in California, I put together my own VA, I call it the VA Home Loan Video School. And I created it in 2015 for veterans. As a matter of fact, in 2015, I had a referral from a realtor named Jennifer Benitez. Hi, Jennifer, if you're watching this. And she had a buyer that came to her that had been pre-approved with some 800 number lender in Utah and would not leave that lender. Ray Bengayan, if you're watching this, I'm talking about you on Facebook. And he called me after he watched my video tutorial series because I emailed it to him. And he said to me, he said, you know what? I've had 3 VA loans. It was about 60 or 70 years old in my lifetime. I did not know half the stuff that I learned on your tutorial series. He was absolutely floored. And of course, I was able to capture his business and get him to move over. So I think the content is out there. You've got to look hard for it. If you're in the California area, hey, I'd love to share that with you. The VA Home Loan Video School, great modules of it.
So for the VA Home Loan School that you have right now, is that something that somebody can get from you through email, or is there a space that they could go to online to get that?
It's on my website, CaliforniaHomeBuyerToday.com. And then it's kind of a long URL. I've got to fix it, but it's CaliforniaHomeBuyerToday.com and then / VA Home Loan Video School. I can email you and you can put it out there later. But
send it to me because it looks like Daniel just hit it up. I would say send it to me and I can put it out, or because I'm getting so many, 20. What I'm up at 25,000, I think, right now on Facebook, and then on YouTube, that's exploding. I can always expose it on there as well for you, because I think it's information that has to get out.
Yeah. Having said that, if I can say this, ultimately, I've learned that when a buyer is thinking about buying a home, they tend to call a realtor first before they call a lender, right? It's just the way it is. They call about a house and they type. So that realtor's got the ultimate responsibility. People don't know, I got to go get pre-qualified before I go look for a home. The realtor tells them that. So realtors are having this initial contact with that veteran buyer. So my belief is, let's get this information out into the realtor's hands so they can then pass it on to the buyer before they get a lot of misinformation. So for that reason, this VA Home Loan Video School, I'm actually branding it with the realtor's information and putting it out there at no cost, just so that realtors can get it out there to buyers because they're having contact with buyers before we get to them.
Fantastic, because again, the Real Estate Blitz is pretty much for realtors. So I could we'll set it up. What I'll do is the website that's getting ready to launch along with the podcast in January, I'll set up a link just for your stuff so they can go there for all things VA. which I think would be really cool. So let's talk about myths. So I've mentioned a few that I knew of. I would like to hear from you. What other myths are out there that you've heard, then debunk them for us?
Number one is they think the VA buy is a weak buy just because they are not putting any money down. It's a terrible thing. 28% of VA buyers actually put money down, right? A lot of them are college educated, have degrees. The median FICO score of a VA buyer nationwide, I have it written down here somewhere, was 738, according to the VA's data from 2016. So a VA buyer is not a weak buyer just because he or she has the ability to buy a house with no money down because of their service that earned them that right. That doesn't mean they're a weak buyer because they're not putting any money in. They usually have pretty healthy savings and TSP retirement accounts or what have you, good scores. So that's the first myth is, they're not putting any money down. They're broke. They have no money. They're going to be a problem. No, they're not. That's a big myth. Secondly, there's this notion out there that VA loans take forever to close, right? I know, we've done some business and you've seen the stuff that we've done. We just put a VA buy into a home in 15 days, 2 weeks ago with KB Homes, Robert Hollowell. I did one in September in 13 days, a service member that came back from Iraq.
What's your fastest?
10 days. In fact, their house almost got in a fire last week over here in Winchester, Marietta, Charles and Jaquie Andrews. 10 days to close a VA loan. So it doesn't have to take forever. The other thing I've seen is people think that it's harder to get it through underwriting, right? And that's not the case. Lenders, we love VA loans because we know the foreclosure rate's going to be low. We know the VA is going to guarantee that loan. And we look for reasons to make the loan work. Our VA underwriters, their mentality is, how can we find a way to make this work? Not, I don't like what I see, I'm going to kill the deal. See? We're looking for ways to make the deal work. The other myth that I hear a lot is something you touched on earlier. The seller's got to pay all his fees. My seller's not going to want to do that. So your VA buyer can take a hike. Not true. Right? That seller doesn't have to do anything. They don't have to pay anything. And so one big advantage, if I can take this in a different direction.
Oh, please do.
Seller, if you're watching this as a listing agent, or a prospective seller, you should welcome and embrace a VA loan with open arms because unlike FHA or conventional, the VA has a set process in place if that appraisal value comes in low, right? There's a checks and balances situation there where the appraiser actually is told to stop and alert the lender, alert the realtor if value is going to be an issue. We don't have that in FHA financing or conventional. You're going to pay for an appraisal and you're going to get a report $40,000 lower than purchase. Well, VA, you have an alert. You have hey, I've got a problem. I need some more data. And even if the value does come in low, you can take that report and go do a rebuttal with the VA. So there's every opportunity for you sellers and you listing agents to get your value as opposed to, when you're taking on an FHA or a conventional offer. Wow,
man, that is pretty cool. And I appreciate you, kind of breaking all that stuff down because like I said, I've been in this business for a little while and I would say I'm always educated more and more on the VA process and the loan itself or the product. And every time I always feel like a dirtbag because I didn't spend more time learning sooner, so that's why I really wanted to do this. What other things, like what else do you think could be of value to put on here? Because we're going to start buttoning this up since we're almost out of time. What else would you like to mention before we jump off?
Extremely important to get qualified before you get out and look for a home. That applies to any kind of buyer, military or not. Find a VA specialist. If I was looking for a certain type of car, I'd go to a dealership that sold those cars more than anything else, right? Find an expert in that field. Find the specialist. Look at their reviews. Look at their ratings. Look at their, what kind of name they have in the community. Get qualified before you wear your heart on your sleeve and go fall in love with that home. Do that first.
Good. That's awesome. And actually I kind of led right in. I was going to ask you what's your number one recommendation for someone that wants to use the VA loan to purchase a home. And it sounds like that answered it right there. So
call the lender, and the lender's going to do two things. They're going to confirm you're qualified, and they're going to confirm that you're eligible, right? They're going to determine your eligibility. And this particularly applies to reservists. So a lot of times reservists think that they're eligible, and they find out they're not because they don't have the length of service you got to have. So it's important that you don't assume that you know. You got to get with the lender and determine your eligibility and your qualification.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Okay, so with that said, if people want to reach out to you, and I'm going to make sure I put this up. So
Sure.
Your name's been up this whole time. If somebody wants to reach out to you, find you, ask you more questions, or explore deeper with you about the VA loan, how can they find you?
Call me. I've got a team of 5. If I can't answer your phone right away, I'll have someone call you right back, 951-551-7633. I usually am not far away from my phone, even until 8, 9 o'clock at night sometimes. The website is CaliforniaHomeBuyerToday.com. So lots of testimonials on that site from fellow military buyers telling their story, a lot of whom had been to, Navy Federal or wherever the heck else. I won't mention the other big lender in the country, but had trouble or couldn't get approved. They came to us and they got their home. So my phone number or CaliforniaHomeBuyerToday.com.
Awesome. And what markets do you work in?
I can cover the entire state of California.
Awesome. State of California. Hey, thank you so much, Charles, for being on.
Yeah, welcome.
I always like to, I never want to make this too long because I think then people lose interest and they won't watch it. And I always want to make sure people consume actually what we're putting out because it's so important. So thank you for being on with me. For those of you that were watching, I hope this gave you a lot of value today. I know the VA, loan is something that people have been asking me to really do an interview on. So I want to do that today. And I want to make sure I did it with the person that, in my opinion, is probably the best guy in California. So make sure you reach out. If you have any questions, hit up Charles. If you have any comments, please drop comments on YouTube, drop them on Facebook, because that's where it's going to be posted first, or drop them on the podcast when it launches in January. If you, do me a favor, like, share, and comment. You're going to know of other real estate agents out there that have these questions. Send them this information. Send them, let them. You can find it on YouTube. Go check it out. The Real Estate Blitz. If you have a client and they're confused about this, send them the same video. That's why we're doing this kind of stuff, is so you can even just hand it up. Say, hey, do me a favor, listen to this thing. It's on the Real Estate Blitz. You're going to love it. It's going to tell you everything you need to know about VA, or go to this website, which was just given to you, so you can be educated on the VA loan. We need, and I say it over and over, I'm not a coach. I'm not a guru. I'm just some guy that has found some success as a real estate agent. And I just deeply believe that I'm on a mission right now to help more agents find success, because if we don't start looking out for each other and we don't start helping each other grow a better, more professional business, our industry will be in trouble. It'll be in trouble because, there's a lot of brokers that aren't looking out for us. So we need to look out for each other. We need to help each other. We need to go and ask our affiliates, our lenders, our title reps, all these other people, ask them to help us as well. Please educate us. I've done a few deals with Charles. A lot of people on our team have done deals with Charles. Charles, do me a favor, jump on with me today and help educate people. They want to help. We need to start helping each other. Let your affiliates help you out, and let's just build a better business. Let's enjoy this and just keep growing and become something. This is how we feed our families. Why not feed them good? That's all I'm saying. So thank you, everybody, for listening to the Real Estate Blitz. I appreciate it. And Charles, as usual, appreciate it, my friend.
You're welcome.
And we'll see you all later. Have a good one.
All right.
All right.
Okay. Bye-bye.